Hey, it's Meatball.
And Mark.
And this is the Rocker Morning Show on demand from 107.7 RKR.
Carrot Top, you're on with Mark and Meatball.
Hey, good morning, Carrot Top.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you guys?
Doing fantastic, man. Extending his residency in Las Vegas at the Luxor. Welcome to the Rocker Morning Show, man. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you, bud. Appreciate it.
Totally, dude. First off, congratulations on the longevity there in Vegas at the Luxor through 2030 now, and next year is going to mark 20 years of doing your show there. This is a huge deal, man.
Yeah, it is. It's even huge for me. It's great. It's gone by fast. I remember the day they asked me to do it, and I said no. And now I'm looking back at it, saying, thank God I say yes.
What initially made you say no to that deal?
Well, I've been doing the show for so long on the road. I was considering myself a road guy. I'm a tour bus, and I'm not a Vegas guy. I didn't like being in one place at the same time long enough, and there was something about Vegas. I didn't get it. And then I gave it a shot for a year, and then it worked out great, and now I can't imagine not being in Vegas.
I was going to say, with getting that gig, did you kind of have this mental thing where you were like, okay, now I really got to step my game up because this is Vegas? Or did you just kind of go in there with that mentality of like, I know what I'm doing. I've been around for years. I'm going to do what I know, and it's going to kill.
No, I had to play by the somewhat rules. I mean, Vegas is a different beast.
Yeah.
When I would go on the road and say, Detroit, do a show in Detroit at the State Theater there or with Fox, it was a different show, and it was a different mentality and everything. And Vegas is completely not that. I mean, Vegas is just a strange mixture of people from all over the country, from all over, you name it. Some speak English, some don't. Some have no clue. The attention span of people even now have gone down to nothing.
Yeah.
So, they're watching buildings blow up and imploded and tigers. And so, I don't know, it just had to really change the show to become more of a Vegas-y type show and more fast-paced and more information quicker to them. So
yeah.
The whole show has evolved completely since I started doing Vegas. It's been a great adventure.
Well, now you're like we mentioned, you're coming up on 20 years of doing this in Vegas now with this extension too, and your name has become one of those synonymous with the city now. So the Siegfrieds and Roys and Penn Tellers and Chris Angels. Now there's Carrot Top as well. How does it feel having your name kind of up in that echelon with those names as entertainers now?
It's great. I mean, I respect all the guys you just mentioned. We've all been working out here so long. We're all friends. And it's kind of a dream come true. When you look back at doing clubs back in the day, and now you're in Vegas doing shows with the Rolling Stones and likes of U2 and everybody. It's cool,
What initially drew you to prop comedy specifically?
I went to a comedy club and without anything, and I auditioned for it, and I was very funny, according to the woman. She said, there's something about you that's funny, except I was doing jokes about colleges, because that's where I was doing my stand-up. Mm-hmm. And so she said, it's really funny, but your stand-up's not going to work to do with general audiences, especially imagine Vegas. So this was just a little town in Florida.
Right.
So I said, go back and try to think of some things that are just a little more generic. So I went to, and I don't know what made me think of it, but it was a neighborhood crime watch sign that was on my wall. And I took it off the wall, and I went down to the club, and I walked in. I said, something like this. And I walked in with it. I said, I was sorry I'm late. I was in the neighborhood. I held the sign up, and she laughed, and I said, how good is our crime watch if they're not even watching the sign? And she thought that was so great. She said, God, I love that. Can you do more of that? And I said, what, steal more signs? And she said, well, yeah, something in that vein. And so I went around the town, and I saw all these street signs that made me laugh.
Yeah.
And there was one that said, slow children at play, that had a stick figure with no feet. So I said, there's one. So I said, hey, slow children to play, but they don't have any fucking feet. No wonder they're slow. And so I just came up with this whole routine with signs, and that's how all the props started. She loved that, and she goes, well, I like that whole slideshow with the, if you want to come up with more, anything visual or whatever, it didn't have to be props.
Yeah.
And I just started thinking visually, and so I came up with boxes and boxes of just ideas.
Yeah.
And that's what catapulted me into, doing it.
You grew up in Florida. You mentioned you were doing some of your early club shows there. How much of, that Florida lifestyle and the quote unquote Florida men played a part in, you know, your comedy writing and such. Did it influence you at all?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, Florida, the whole scene down there. It was Larry the Cable Guy and myself, and there was a good group of really successful young comics down there, and they had a lot of work. I wouldn't say a lot of work, but they had a few clubs, and they were growing, and then they had one-nighters there that kind of gave a lot of work. That's the most important thing, is to get stage time when you're trying to, you know, make it, because you got to learn what the hell you're going to do when you get up there. So, but then by living in Florida, you know, that was kind of a fun way for material-wise, because a lot of the jokes were based on, you know, things in Florida, you know, like old people, and I would have an old lady's head that went above the seat when you're driving, so you could see her head, and it was just a whole bunches and things of just people. It made it easy, you know.
Yeah.
I know you grew up in Rockledge, Florida, which is not too far away from Cape Canaveral, where your dad worked as a NASA engineer. I'm curious if you've ever had an interest in space as a career before taking on comedy.
Absolutely. I loved the Space Center, and I was fascinated by it. I just knew that I wasn't smart enough to do it. In fact, my dad, when I went to a comedy club, my dad, first thing he said, you know, I said, "Dad, I think I want to be a comedian." And my dad was like, "Comedian? Well, that's never going to happen." And I said, "Well, what do you want me to be?" He said, "You should be an engineer like your father and work at NASA."
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, you do know, you know, that's not going to happen." So, you know, I don't think I'm going to beat you, Dad. And, you know, it's a whole different brain that what my father does. But my side of the brain, though, is clever. I do have a clever brain to come up with these things.
Yeah.
It just didn't seem that NASA would be the one route to take. But I very, very much love all the space. I'm still very fascinated by space.
Well, and your dad was an engineer there at NASA, and I have to imagine to build a lot of your props and stuff, you kind of have to have that engineering brain there. So, you know, in a sense, you're kind of like your dad.
No, and I definitely have that gene, my father's gene. I'm very creative at making these props, and I've made some that my dad even held them and said, "Man, that's pretty creative, son. How'd you think to put the motor over there?" I'm like, yeah. So, yeah. But it's been and I've also been a few that I sent him to make.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. I had a NASCAR hat where these little cars would go around your head.
Yeah.
And for some reason I couldn't engineer it right, so I called my dad and with a little drawing, and I gave him the general idea, and he drew it and boxed it up and sent it to me, and it was like, I still have it. It's one of the best props I ever had.
That's great.
I was going to say, you really have to have a certain set of skills to be a prop comic, because you take a look at people, well, like yourself, and as well as Gallagher as well. Were you ever a fan of his work?
Oh, very much so. Gallagher's huge fan. I got to know him when I was a kid and try to help him write jokes even.
Oh, wow.
So so I knew Gallagher very well, and I always wanted to have and that's what's funny, when you see something like Gallagher. When I saw him at that age, I wanted to be him, but I wanted to do it in a different way. Like,
right.
It's very important to kind of, you know what I mean, to learn from him, but not steal from him.
Exactly.
You get kind of
Well, you have definitely found a way to differentiate yourself from literally any comic out there. Your career speaks for itself. Another extension there at the Luxor in Vegas. Congratulations on that. And, if we ever make our way out to Vegas, man, we're looking forward to seeing the show and seeing you, man. But congratulations, and thanks for your time today, man. This was a ton of fun.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate your help, my man.
Thanks, dude.